Our top story today, more fallout from allegations of Canadian espionage. Brazil is demanding answers about reports Canada spied on its mining ministry. That report not only shed light on a Canadian agency many Canadians knew very little about, it also made headlines all around the world. Now, the lead reporter behind this said there could be many more allegations to come. That journalist is Glenn Greenwald. He's with the Guardian newspaper, and my guest now from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Glenn, thank you for being our guest this morning.
Good to be with you.
We asked our Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, who's at the APEC summit in Bali, what he had to say about the allegations of spying, Canadian spying on the Brazilian mining ministry. And what he said, Glenn, was he's very, very concerned about the revelations and he'll follow up on them. And that was pretty much it. Surprised by that?
No, I mean, I think one of the most significant aspects of the story from the beginning has been not just the revelations about the surveillance, but the threat posed to Western democracies by having governments conceal their most consequential programs from the people who are there to hold them accountable democratically. How can you have a healthy, functioning democracy when you have this massive spying system that has all kinds of consequences for people being built completely in the dark with almost no public discussion? And the fact that Prime Minister Harper feels compelled to say almost nothing, I think, is reflective of this contempt for democracy that lies at the heart of this story.
You spoke yesterday with another program here on CBC, that's As It Happens on CBC Radio 1, and said some very interesting things in conversation with Carol Off. I wanted to unpack some of them if we could. Number one, you said that there are a lot of documents to come. I don't know, you haven't published them yet, so I'm not sure how much you can tell me, but can you tell me any more about the other documents you have, the nature of them, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, as a journalist, I can't talk about stories before they're ready to be published. That would be irresponsible. But what I can tell you is that there is very substantial evidence that the spying that we revealed that Canada was doing for economic reasons aimed at Brazil is far from aberrational. This is something that the 5 nations who work together under the so-called Five Eyes program, the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, do routinely. They are building a massive global spying program that has nothing to do with national security or terrorism in most cases, and we intend to continue to report very aggressively on all of it, including Canada.
You said it goes beyond economic considerations, but what you said to As It Happens was it includes Canadians spying on ordinary citizens. Is that Canadian citizens, Glenn, or is that citizens elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm not going to talk about my stories until they're ready to be published, but one of the ways that these agencies, the 5 agencies I just described, put a massive spying net over the entire world is they collect millions and millions of communication events indiscriminately, not from people they're targeting as bad people, but from people all over the world, including their own citizens, and then put them in databases and start analyzing and storing and monitoring them. And that includes innocent people, both foreign nationals and in their own country.
That's interesting because one of our investigative reporters in our Ottawa bureau, Glenn, did an exclusive interview last night with the former head of CSEC and asked him specifically about the capability to spy on Canadians. He was adamant the agency isn't. This is his word. That's against the law. Absolutely not. So denial there. Is that believable to you?
No, I mean, just technologically, these agencies don't have the capability to segregate the communications that are foreign in origin from the communications that are domestic in origin. They have some capability to do that, but it's massively imperfect. And the wall that they claim they create to segregate off domestic communications is incredibly porous. So all kinds of domestic communications end up in their databases that they call foreign, and then after, when they get caught doing it, they say, oh, that was just incidental. The other problem is that it's fine for Canada to say, oh, it's against the law for us to spy on Canadian citizens, but the partners with which the Canadian Intelligence Service works most closely, the Americans and the British, have no legal limits on their ability to spy on whomever they want outside of their own borders, including Canada. And so there's all kinds of sharing that goes on between these two countries. But let me just quickly say about that official who was on the CBC. I saw him, I think, 3 or 4 times. He went on and said that he doubts that Canada is actually spying on Brazil's Ministry of Mines, that this is probably just a theoretical test that was created to practice spying on al-Qaeda. And I was genuinely stunned by the contempt for the intelligence of the Canadian people that he's displaying when he makes that kind of a claim and expects people to believe it, that they were just testing how they're going to spy on Al-Qaeda, and they just randomly picked the ministry.
You know, just to be clear, that was not the former head of CSEC to whom you're referring. That was an interview with a security expert, a former member of CSIS, which is our other intelligence service, who actually made those comments in his view. Can I come back then to the relationship? When you were talking about the U.S. National Security Agency, one of the things you said, again, to As It Happens, that really stood out for me is you said Canadians will find it surprising, if not shocking, the relationship between CSEC and the NSA. What exactly is the nature of the relationship?
Well, what I was really talking about there was the type of spying and the extent of the spying that the Canadian Intelligence Service does in conjunction with the GCHQ in the UK and the NSA in the United States. So as the reporting that we've done over the last 4 months shows, the goal of the NSA literally is to eliminate privacy globally, to make every form of electronic communication by and between human beings subject to being monitored, collected, and stored by the surveillance systems they're constructing. And the Canadians are an integral part of that. They meet constantly with the NSA. They're involved in virtually every aspect of what the NSA is doing. They provide assistance, and they're involved in all sorts of activities of the kind that we reported on Sunday night in Brazil. If you look at what is talked about and discussed in Canada politically, very, very little of that is known, what this agency even does, let alone the full extent of their surveillance activities. And that's why I think it will be so surprising to a population that has been kept in the dark about all this.
All right. Glenn, I have to let you go. Obviously, there's so much to ask you about, but we'll find out more because you have said, you won't talk about who benefited or particular Canadian companies for now. So that begs the question, when? When can we expect more revelations involving Canada?
Yeah, these documents are complex. We're working, very hard to make the reporting ready, and as soon as it's ready, it will be published.
And then I'll speak to you again, I hope. Thank you for the time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.